Okay, welcome back. 30 minutes to go for the pre-open session at 9 o'clock, and it's indicative of a 40-odd point higher start. Let's welcome in Prakash Diwan, who's with us. Prakash, hi, good morning. Good to have you with us here as always. Three areas I want your quick thoughts on. Public sector banks, we saw a 3% cut in the index on Friday. For the week, Friday to Friday, it was still higher. But do you think a top has been made on that for the year? Or you think there is more to go? Resumption of the move, and then two smaller parts of the market which saw very frenzied moves. One is fertilizer, and that too, the Madras fertilizer, FACT, NFL, etc. And sugar made a comeback on Friday. So PSU banks, sugar and fertilizer. Go on.
Good morning, Prashant. So I think, PSU banks is probably taking a pause from what we started middle of the year when we had this June-July correction, and then, the kind of fancy that started building around banks. It's just started percolating to the PSU banks. It's been a bit too soon. It's now, probably for the banks to catch up in terms of actual earnings growth and a lot of the recovery of provisions that they have written off in the past, which will start coming and aiding the balance sheet. Once that is done, you'll probably see a little bit of a re-rating begin again, the next phase. As I keep on explaining, banks, the cycle is very simple. It's growth, hyper-growth, NPA creation, then the cleanup. So we've just got out of the cleanup and we've got into the growth phase. So I think there are more legs to go, but some of the smaller PSU banks definitely are very pricey, very expensive on valuation, because they're yet to actually see benefits come through. So, what's happened is the larger banks, which actually did the real work in terms of cleanups and provision write-backs, they are the ones that are getting mimicked by the smaller banks, and people look at, more of low price stocks to get into at this point in time. So I think for the year, yes, I agree the top has been made. I mean, there's hardly any time left for the year, another maybe a week and a half or so. But come next year, post-March is when probably you'll see the resumption in the cycle. So you'll probably go through a time correction. On the fertilizer space, my belief is, the prioritizing that the government is doing in terms of gas supplies and the kind of arrangement. And you had a very lovely interaction with the secretary the other day, where he was explaining how, the ties with various nations has been working well for them in making sure that the fertilizer sector doesn't get impacted on any gas supply disruptions. And that is very encouraging, because given food inflation, given the kind of cost, the price escalation in some of the commodities that you otherwise see, it's usually difficult for the sector to absorb this. But this time it has absorbed, it's passed it off to consumers, and we've been seeing a very elevated kind of a trend for most of these prices. In spite of that, there's been agri growth in the recent numbers. So I think fertilizer is here to stay. It's a re-rating after a long time. I think I've not seen this in the last 5-6 years. And what's happening is once they get into some sort of a scale up, the efficiencies will kick in. The operating leverage will happen. This is exactly what happened to sugar maybe about 2 years back. So that's where the cycle is. So it's definitely very promising. And on the sugar cycle, I think we've discussed this quite often. You will have to stick to the larger names, in my view, because they are the ones who actually benefit more. They're more resilient. In case of any regulatory changes that get made in terms of especially price mechanisms and all, or the quota system for exports, it's going to be the smaller ones that will get impacted much more. So, they don't go with the high beta names, go with the larger names like Balrampur, Dampur, so those will be much more safer. But sugar is definitely in a very sweet spot, literally, figuratively, at this point in time, given the dynamics on pricing and on the ethanol consumption. I mean, every day you've been seeing how the ethanol adoption has been going up, and it's getting much more broad-based. So my sense is sugar companies, good times still ahead.
Prakash, morning. Things have quietened out, right? Even in terms of news flow. I was struggling to ask you some stock which is in the news. But just tell us, any interesting tactical plays, any themes that you've discovered recently?
So, good morning, everybody. So I think, yes, come New Year end, the year end, and, we start kind of pinning a lot of hopes on the New Year, so nothing much really takes up. But one sector that my sense is, again, which is getting into a little bit of a cyclical mode from, this debate on cyclical versus structural keeps on happening every time a sector revs up. But in this case, it's very sincerely cyclical in terms of the upswing, and that's probably the road sector. look at the kind of consolidation that suddenly set up. I mean, you have everybody talking about projects that were not doing well, which probably were not designed in the right way from a financial closure perspective. They are the ones who are kind of being bought out by people like ARCs or alternative asset managers. On the other hand, NHAI continues to ramp up the new order book for a lot of the newer sectors. And what's going to happen is once the DFC comes through or gets closer to completion and actual operational listing usage, you will start realizing how significant this can be in terms of making sure that our ambitions to export more, especially engineering goods beyond just services, is going to be dependent on how we manage the logistics element. Now, the logistics cost is something which is a big deterrent for us as a country. While the ports have improved their efficiency or are in the process of doing it, that the consolidation we've seen, it's a road sector that has to kind of jive in. So I think that's going to be a great sector to watch. The number of companies is huge, but you have to be extremely picky, choosy, because some of them have very fractured balance sheets because of the past. So be careful. But there's lots happening there, which I can see in terms of news flow, which is still under the radar of, so it's not making headlines, but it's definitely in the middle pages. And that's where a lot of change will happen, Rima.
Okay, so you see the road sector bubbling.